Players overestimating their worth and demanding trades doesn't always work out the way they'd hope.
Melvin Gordon came out and I guess through his agent said that he wants to be traded. He wants a new deal. Otherwise, trade him.
Everyone knows that we're now living in the age of player empowerment. But just because a guy can demand a trade doesn't mean that they necessarily should. Let's take a look back at 10 NFL players who demanded trades and had it backfire on them. Deshaun Watson feels like a very natural place to start this list. I don't think anyone, and I mean anyone, has had a worse turn of events since demanding a trade than Mr. Watson. And listen, before we get into it, I know that not everything that has gone down with Deshaun in the time since he tried to bully his way out of town has to do with him asking for the trade, or honestly, really anything to do with football. But if you look at the sum of the events, there is simply no denying that his decision to ask out backfired. The plethora of accusations, the character assault, the whole 9 yards. It was a brutal twist of fate for him, and really just a sad situation overall. Especially when you consider the fact that all this mess with the sexual misconduct allegations may have been waiting in the wings all along, as it has been rumored that the team's leadership ended up leaking the information, making him effectively untradeable. And to think, all that trouble getting out might have started because he was ticked off at the organization for not taking any of his input on their search for a new general manager. It's honestly just quite insane. Deshaun was not the first signal caller to get a little over his skis in demanding a trade. Not by a long shot. Think back to Carson Palmer. He was the former #1 overall pick in the 2003 NFL Draft and played for the Cincinnati Bengals for 5 years before he decided that he had quite enough of their nonsense. So much so that he requested to be traded after a disappointing 4-12 season in 2010. And boy, it happened in a rather dramatic way. WCPO-TV reported that a friend of the Bengals quarterback quoted him as saying, "I will never set foot in Paul Brown Stadium again. I have $80 million in the bank. I don't have to play football for money. I'll play it for the love of the game, but that would have to be elsewhere." Needless to say, the team did not take too kindly to those remarks and tried to force him into retirement rather than trade him. Palmer thought he had hit a stroke of luck when the Bengals rookie QB Andy Dalton led the team to a 6-2 start, as the Bengals decided they had tortured their former star long enough and they shipped him out to Oakland. The only problem was that the Bengals turned into a perennial playoff team under Dalton, and the Raiders, well, they went 8-16 under Palmer's reign. His performance was pretty pitiful, honestly, especially to his standards. He only threw 35 touchdowns compared to 30 interceptions in those 24 games. Carson is lucky he had a nice turnaround in Arizona. Otherwise, his legacy would have been completely tarnished. We saw something similar happen with another quarterbacking legend, Brett Favre. When Favre finally reached the end of the road in Green Bay after his countless retirement attempts, he felt he still had more football in him. The situation quickly turned contentious because the old gunslinger was trying to pick and choose where he wanted to be sent to, and Green Bay was understandably not excited about the prospects of dealing him somewhere within the division. Favre actually got off to a good start in New York too, something many people forget because of how it ended. But he was 8-3 before a nagging bicep injury seemed to tank his play. The team ended up finishing 9-7 and missing the playoffs. Favre's numbers were not pretty. He only threw for 3,472 yards and notched the same number of interceptions as touchdowns, with 22 apiece. Rodgers and the Packers didn't fare better as a team, finishing 6-10. But the young quarterback showed plenty of promise that vindicated Green Bay's decision, recording 4,000 plus passing yards and 28 touchdowns to just 13 interceptions. Favre did have a resurgence the following season in Minnesota, nearly leading Green Bay's hated rival to a Super Bowl berth, before Greg Williams and the Bountygate Saints brutalized him in the NFC Championship game. Favre never really recovered from that game, and he teetered out of the NFL the following season, playing just 13 games to a 5-8 record. At least Favre had some good moments to cling to from that second act. Melvin Gordon is another classic example of a player that completely overestimated his value in a contract negotiation and found himself on the wrong side of a trade demand. He had made a nice little career for himself as a member of the Chargers after they took him with the 15th overall pick in the 2015 NFL Draft. He made 2 Pro Bowls and was widely respected around the league as a solid running back. Through 4 seasons, he had 3,628 rushing yards and 1,577 receiving yards, along with 38 total touchdowns. The only problem was, he saw himself as more than just a solid running back. And ahead of the 2019 NFL season, he told the team that if he did not receive a new contract to his liking, he was going to be demanding a trade. "I know my value," Gordon said. "I know what I bring to this team, and I'm sticking with that." The team called his bluff, and after he sat out 4 full games, Gordon returned to the team only to find that he had lost a huge chunk of his workload to Austin Eckler, who burst onto the scene in Gordon's absence. Gordon eventually got what he wanted in terms of leaving the Chargers, but it was not until the following season as a free agent. And his holdout, combined with Eckler's success, made him appear far more expendable than he or his agent would have liked, tanking his free agent value. Tack on the money he lost from sitting out, and his trade demand really starts looking like a disastrous decision. We've seen this before with other running backs too, like Le'Veon Bell. He at least ended up getting a decent-sized deal after his holdout, which ended up lasting an entire season. But it was with the Jets. And he found himself on the wrong side of a deranged head coach, cough cough Adam Gase, who had no interest in using the star running back that the team's general manager had signed. He went from being a perennial Pro Bowler to seeing his workload and production totally diminish with New York. In 17 games across 2 seasons, he didn't even crack 850 rushing yards and only scored 4 total touchdowns, a far cry from the production he had in Pittsburgh. And while much of that can be attributed to the Jets' utter incompetence, it looks to have had a ripple effect on the rest of his career, because even once he was set free and made his way to Kansas City, where everyone expected him to explode into that high-powered offense, he was still far from the feature back he was in the Steel City. He played 9 games for the Chiefs in 2020, starting only 2, and netting less than 300 rushing yards and a mere 2 touchdowns, all the while taking a backseat to the other explosive options in Kansas City's dynamic offensive system. He even found himself as the odd man out during the team's Super Bowl run, only notching 2 attempts in the 2020 postseason. His plummeting production is actually reminiscent of Eric Dickerson's. The Hall of Fame running back had an ugly fallout with the Los Angeles Rams over his contract negotiations, and forced his way out of town, ending up in Indianapolis. While he still had a couple of great seasons immediately following the trade, he failed to eclipse 730 rushing yards in the last 4 seasons of his storied career, after being one of the most unstoppable rushers of his time. And the team never saw all that much success with him either. Also, he recently recounted a couple of ugly, racist taunts that he received from the Colts fan base while he was a member of the team that still bother him.
I won't forget that at that stadium, when I ran for, I think I just went over 10,000 yards to fast anyone. They booed me. They booed. Booed. And I've never forgot that. But the thing that really sticks out the most to me, I will never forget this. And the girl I was dating, named Holly, we're still good friends. She talks about it still to this day. So Eric, I will never forget that in that city. They took, you take a banner and you let it hang over the
sure,
rail.
right.
We love the Colts, or we love Fred, or we love Rodney, whatever. And they took a black baby and sit in the Indian style position, put a stack of money on one side, watermelons on the other, and me holding the fried chicken in my hand with big red lips. I've never ever forgotten that, and I never will forget it.
He had lower expectations, but we saw the same thing happen with Browns tight end David Njoku. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, demanded a trade from Cleveland, despite having seemingly no leverage coming off an injury-plagued 2019 season. The team responded by slotting in Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant, who did a nice job taking most of the in-game reps, while Njoku netted only 19 receptions during the entirety of the 2020 season. The sides have since mended fences, and he resigned with Cleveland. But I'd wager for far less money than he could have earned without all the controversy and decreased playing time. Antonio Brown is another playmaker that had his fair share of ups and downs since demanding a trade. In his case, like Bell's, he was issuing those demands to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And his post-trade demand rap sheet makes Bell's look modest. He almost got sent to Buffalo before poisoning the well so viciously that the trade fell through. Then he went to the Raiders, where he managed to freeze his foot, threaten retirement over a helmet, and somehow not even play one game. Then, in what looked like a stroke of luck, he went to New England, only to get suspended indefinitely by the league and released amid sexual misconduct allegations. Brown did miraculously land on his feet in Tampa Bay with Tom Brady, where the duo won a Super Bowl together. But even as special as winning a ring is, I don't know if it's worth the public humiliation he went through. Most of Brown's embarrassment was his own doing, though. Julio Jones' fallout and his exit from Atlanta really only spiraled because his buddy Shannon Sharp embarrassed him on national television by airing a phone call without his consent.
Julio, have the guts to pick up the phone.
What's happening?
Yeah!
All right.
Julio, you want to stay in Atlanta? Oh, man, nah, I'm out of there, man.
That being said, all that embarrassment and media scrutiny might end up being worth it if he can help his new team, the Tennessee Titans, win a Super Bowl. But until then, this incident is still an embarrassing black eye on Jones's otherwise impressive resume. Last but not least, we have Earl Thomas, who had quite a fall from grace after demanding a trade from Seattle, the only team he'd ever known. His saga started in 2018, when he did not report to training camp after announcing he'd hold out until he got a new contract. He ended up coming back to action, but during a Week 4 matchup with the Cardinals, he broke his leg and allegedly flipped off Pete Carroll as he was carted off the field. The following offseason, he signed with the Ravens, but it was tumultuous for him in Baltimore as well. For starters, he got some flack for reneging on a deal he had with the Chiefs to sign with Baltimore in the first place. His performance was inconsistent throughout the year, and the fan base was notoriously lukewarm on him. Until the following season, when he got into a fight with another player at practice and was unceremoniously released from the team. Then he had the whole bizarro cheating scandal the following offseason and hasn't played a snap in the NFL since. You have to think that he probably wishes he never left the comfort and success he had found himself in Seattle. But which other NFL players demanded trades that totally backfired? Did we leave anyone off the list? Join us in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton, and hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.